one of the hardest things in life is to truly know yourself. We need to spend time and effort questioning, reflecting, and really understanding who we are, instead of becoming who others expect us to be. It's important to take the time to recognize our strengths and talents and use them to help others. The author of this book, Alex Pattakos, studied under the renowned psychologist and founder of Logotherapy, Viktor Frankl. In line with Frankl's man's search for meaning, Pattakos applies logotherapy to modern work and life, inspiring readers to find meaning in both and to combat life's challenges like anxiety, depression, and emptiness through that sense of purpose. Through this video, you will gain the 7 principles for living a life of meaning. How meaningful goals can help you break through current challenges. How to face life with genuine optimism. Hello everyone, welcome to Upward Journey, where we focus on sharing the best insights from great books. We share at least 3 book summaries a week, so make sure to subscribe to our channel. We've organized this entire script into a document that you can download for free via the link below the video. Now, let's dive into today's book review of Prisoners of Our Thoughts. First, I'd like to mention another highly influential book, Man's Search for Meaning. Many readers love this book, which was written by Viktor Frankl, the founder of Logotherapy. Frankl passed away on September 2, 1997, but before he did, the author of Prisoners of Our Thoughts reached out to him. As followers of Frankl's work, they told him about their plan to write a book on how to find life's meaning, outlining specific, actionable steps to do so. Frankl was thrilled and encouraged these young authors to write the book well. As a result, Prisoners of Our Thoughts serves as an extension of Man's Search for Meaning, presenting 7 principles that, if followed, can help us find purpose in life. Viktor Frankl was a psychologist born on March 26, 1905 in Vienna. At the age of 16, he delivered a profound lecture titled The Meaning of Life. Imagine a 16-year-old giving a talk on such a significant topic. He spent his entire life helping others, as well as himself, explore the meaning of life, which is truly remarkable. His high school thesis was on the psychological ideas of philosophers, demonstrating his extraordinary talent as a psychologist. By age 19, Frankl had already published a psychology paper in the International Journal of Psychoanalysis at Freud's invitation. That same year, he met Alfred Adler, author of Understanding Human Nature. Thanks to Adler's recommendation, Frankl published another major article in the International Journal of Individual Psychology. At 21, he introduced the idea of logotherapy, incorporating the term logos, Greek for meaning. Today, when we design a logo, we're aiming to capture the essence, the very purpose of a brand. This marked the beginning of logotherapy. At 21, in 1938, Frankl opened his own psychology clinic, eventually parting ways with Adler and Freud as their perspectives on psychology diverged. Unfortunately, WWE interrupted his life drastically. In September 1942, Frankl, a Jewish man, was arrested and sent to concentration camps, including Dachau and Auschwitz, where he endured 3 years of suffering. His parents, wife, and brother perished in the camps, yet Frankl survived, driven by his unyielding pursuit of meaning. Out of these experiences, he would later write Man's Search for Meaning. When he was taken to the camps, Frankl had with him a thick manuscript of a book he'd been writing, The Doctor and the Soul. The Nazis confiscated it, likely burning or discarding it. Determined to rewrite his book, Frankl spent every spare moment in the camp recalling its contents. He viewed this act as a form of salvation, giving him the purpose to endure. As Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Recently, I rewatched Ang Lee's film, Life of Pi, which tells of a boy named Pi stranded on a lifeboat with a tiger. At one point, Pi reflects that if it weren't for that terrifying tiger, he might have given up. With the tiger there, he had a purpose, to survive and not fall prey to it, so he fought to keep the tiger alive. This will to survive kept him from despair. That's what meaning does. It fuels our lives. Reading The Prisoners of Our Thoughts, I had a major revelation. We often talk about positive energy, but what does that truly mean? Positive energy is the feeling you get when you connect with a sense of purpose. Eating a meal, for instance, may feel mundane, even empty. But if that meal reminds you of family, brings a sense of warmth, or evokes a memory, it becomes meaningful. The same activity can feel either positive or negative, depending on whether or not it connects to something meaningful. The author of this book presents 7 principles for finding life's meaning. The first principle is, choose your attitude freely. If you've read Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you'll recognize this concept. Everyone has a fundamental freedom in life, no matter the circumstances, that can't be taken away. The freedom to choose. At any moment, you can make entirely different choices. Frankl observed in the concentration camp that, under the same brutal conditions, human nature could split to opposite extremes. Some people sank into shameful behavior, collaborating with the Nazis, betraying others, or stealing. Others rose to become compassionate and selfless, sharing their meager bread with children or encouraging others with songs to keep them alive. Why this divergence? Those who stooped to low behaviors often excused themselves by saying, "I have no choice. I'm just doing what I must to survive in this environment." But Frankl saw through the actions of those with a noble spirit that we always have a choice. Even in the most severe circumstances, we can choose dignity, compassion, and faith in humanity. This illustrates that people always have the freedom to choose. Why then do people often become prisoners of their thoughts? A big reason lies in human nature itself. We are creatures of habit. Our brains actually prefer not to think actively. In primitive times, the more we thought, the more energy we consumed, which could interfere with survival tasks like hunting. So, we often lean on habit instead. I recently read something insightful. Many people think they're thinking, but they're just reordering their biases. Our minds strengthen these biases over time, reinforcing them and mistakenly thinking we're finding truth. We then run into the same conflicts with others because we can't break out of our own rigid thinking. When we're trapped in this kind of habitual mindset, we overlook our potential and that of others, a critical point. This is why books like The Third Alternative and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People stress the importance of recognizing our capacity for change and that of others. If we have the freedom to choose, so do those around us. When we see this potential, we find mental flexibility, which helps us break free from our mental prisons. Typical prisoners of thought constantly complain and reject change, often saying, "That'll never work," or "I've tried and it's pointless." They close themselves off to any new options or perspectives. What then is true optimism? Let's look at how Frankl approached this. He had a motto for coping saying, "If there was a 100% chance that I'd be executed immediately, then there's no way I'd survive the camp." This is pure logic. If he were about to die, he'd already be dead, not living in the camp. If there's no such chance, then from now on, I'm responsible for my life. No matter which camp I'm sent to or how many threats I face, if there's even a sliver of survival, I must seize it. This is a mindset I chose to live by. In the concentration camp, it was either death or survival. If death was imminent, there'd be no concern. He'd be gone instantly. But if survival was possible, he'd need to own every day, becoming the master of his life rather than one consumed by despair. Frankl's motto represented a set of essential principles, a guiding code to overcome his horrific reality. He chose a positive attitude, took full responsibility for each day, and this choice kept him moving forward. I'm reminded of an anecdote about the Chinese monk Xu Yun. Once, a Japanese soldier threatened him, saying, "Aren't you afraid I'll shoot you?" Xu Yun replied, "If I am fated to be killed by you, what is there to fear? If not, there's nothing to fear either. It's a nearly identical philosophy. Based on this approach, let's redefine what true optimism means. First, it means being able to foresee the outcomes of our attitudes and choices and understand the range of responses available. True optimism isn't just thinking positively, it's about realizing that our choices have real consequences. Second, and even more importantly, it's having the motivation to turn possibilities into reality. In short, with optimism, we make three key choices. 1. We choose a positive attitude to face our current situation. 2. We think creatively about potential outcomes. 3. Our attitude fuels the drive to turn possibilities into realities. This brings us back to the first principle. Always remember, you can freely choose your attitude. This is the foundation of true optimism. There's a fascinating case in this book about an American named Waldo. He wrote a book with an intriguing title, My First 100 Years. He was 104 when he wrote it. Instead of calling it My Life or My Autobiography, he titled it My First 100 Years, implying he planned to live another 100. He passed away at 107, not quite reaching 200, but his optimistic spirit speaks volumes. Even at 104, he chose to write with such joy and humor, capturing a zest for life that we can all learn from. The book also includes an exercise called the Top 10 Positive Outcomes Exercise to help us cultivate flexibility in choosing our outlook. Let's say you're constantly worried about losing your job. The anxiety can feel like a mental prison. Here's what you can do. Take a sheet of paper and list the top 10 potential benefits if you were to lose your job. If you watch good films, you'll notice that many of them start with the protagonist facing a crisis, only to later find that it's actually a gift. Imagine you lost your job. What could be some benefits? First, you'd have more time to rest, which you probably didn't have before. Second, you could pause and reflect, considering things you've always wanted to do but never had the chance. Third, this could be an opportunity to review past mistakes. Fourth, it might open doors to find ways to earn 10 times more. Why do others earn much more while you settle for a set salary? Fifth, you'd have more time to connect with your children. See? Just brainstorming reveals a list of positive reasons. This is an exercise everyone should try, and I'm confident that afterward, you'll see the world differently, because you'll realize there is always a choice in how you view things. This is the first principle, freely choosing your attitude toward life. The second principle is pursue meaningful goals. Many people confuse goals with desires. I want a new iPhone, a house, a car. If our goals are purely material, homes, cars, money, or even children, we'll never feel fully satisfied because external possessions alone can't fulfill us. Pursuing only outward rewards won't bring lasting happiness. We need to learn to seek meaning. People sometimes fall into what's known as a meaning maze, where they struggle to see the purpose in life. Frankl once shared a moving example. A monkey used in medical experiments died and was dissected. Did the monkey's life have meaning? From a human perspective, it did, as its contribution helped develop medicines to save lives. But the monkey itself was unaware of this purpose. Still, its life had meaning. In life, we often face similar meaning mazes, where we may not see the purpose of our actions. The important thing is to believe that there is meaning, even if we haven't yet discovered it. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Living only by a checklist of material KPIs without ever reflecting is what Socrates would call an unexamined life, a life trapped in the meaning maze. This book teaches us that meaning isn't something we create, it's something we uncover. In Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl shares the story of an elderly man who came to him for counseling after his wife's passing. They had spent their whole lives together, and now in his 80s, he felt life had no purpose without her. Frankl asked him, "What if you had passed away first and she were left behind?" The man replied, "She would have suffered as I do now." Frankl responded, "Then this is the meaning of your life, to bear this pain so that she didn't have to." The man discovered that even his suffering had meaning, which made it bearable. Often, we lack the skill to find meaning, and that's why we get lost in life's meaning mazes. But once we can see the purpose in what we do, we tap into that energy we call positivity. Life may very well be meaningless, but searching for life's meaning is meaningful in itself. Similarly, the process of breaking free from the meaning maze is, in itself, valuable. This brings us to the second principle: pursue meaningful goals rather than focusing solely on material achievements. The third principle is called discover the meaning in life's moments. By the third principle, we're diving into practical approaches for escaping the meaning maze. How can we do this? By learning to find meaning in the small moments of life. For example, slow down and appreciate meaning. Imagine you're walking down a tree-lined path and see leaves cascading from the trees. Have you ever truly watched a leaf fall? Its dance in the air, the path it takes, and how it lands? When you take a moment to admire the beauty of falling leaves, you connect to the cycles of nature, which in turn might lead you to reflect on the transitions in human life. This transforms a simple walk into a much richer experience because it's infused with a sense of human connection. In modern times, though, we often substitute meaning with busyness. We fill our days to avoid idle moments that might lead us to ponder life's purpose. Whenever there's a pause, we quickly check our phones or scroll through videos. But in reality, we need those moments of quiet to sense, reflect, and feel. This is what discovering the meaning in the moment is about. One useful exercise here is called the excavating existence exercise. Try it whenever you're in a particularly challenging situation or during a significant moment in life or work. The questions in this exercise can help you find meaning in that moment. 1. How did you respond to the situation? What did you do or think? 2. What emotions did you feel? 3. What did you learn? New knowledge, skills, or changes in perspective. 4. How will you grow from this experience? How will you apply what you learned for personal growth? This method of excavating meaning is essentially about reflecting on moments, whether painful, stressful, or joyful. Ask yourself, what did I learn? How did I handle it? How could I have handled it better? This process allows us to continuously find and embrace meaning. A crucial insight here is that meaning isn't in the task itself. It's the feeling of resonating with your true self or essence. Meaning is about aligning with who you are deep down, not about the task at hand. Life, then, isn't just a series of tasks, but a mission. Life isn't simply a duty given to us by fate. It's a mission we define by how we intend to live it. Here's an exercise. Imagine you're writing your autobiography. What would the title be? Think of a title that would capture the essence of your purpose. This exercise could reveal what your personal mission might be. This is the third principle, discovering meaning in life's moments. The fourth principle is never go against your conscience. The author describes his experience as a university professor. After being promoted to head of his department, he eagerly prepared for an upcoming inspection, hoping it would be a chance to shine and make a contribution. But his excessive efforts to impress the evaluators ended up creating tension and dissatisfaction among his colleagues. Many people can relate to this. I remember striving to earn a higher academic rank and reviewing the exact requirements to publish certain types of papers, thinking I was working toward my goal. But looking back, it feels embarrassing, because it wasn't what I truly wanted. It was a desire driven by external expectations. The result of going against one's true self is a greater distance from meaning, and when we look back, it feels like a waste of time and energy. This principle shows that when we focus excessively on pleasing others, we often end up undermining ourselves. We may prioritize the end result over the true goal, forgetting that our work should be about connecting to meaning rather than impressing others. This is where a concept known as paradoxical intention comes in. The more we obsess over achieving a specific goal, receiving praise, or winning an award, the more distorted our actions become, pushing us further from that goal. You can test this idea. Next time you're speaking to a large audience, tell yourself, I must make a great impression. My life depends on this talk. The more you fixate on this thought, the more likely you'll feel tense and stray from your intended message. Understanding paradoxical intention can help us manage many fears. By recognizing how this overfocus distorts our actions, we can start to see it as a tool to overcome anxiety. This principle of avoiding actions that go against our true self is key in finding meaning. When you expose your worst fears, this is known as paradoxical intention therapy. By deliberately exaggerating a fear, you can confront it more directly. For example, there was a man who would sweat excessively whenever he felt nervous, especially under his arms. He found it embarrassing. Imagine being in a hot summer day while others are fine, and you have noticeable sweat marks. He became self-conscious and avoided talking to others. A psychologist advised him, when you enter a room, just tell people, here it comes, it's raining again. Look, I'm drenched. So, he would lead with the fact that he was sweating heavily. And just like that, it was no longer an issue. The embarrassment faded because he put the worst part out there first. There's another example from the US, where a person was pulled over for running a yellow light. Instead of denying or defending his actions, he quickly said, I'm at fault. I did the wrong thing. I should be fined. Running a yellow light is so dangerous. By openly admitting the worst-case scenario and expressing his fears, the officer simply advised him to be careful next time and let him go. This approach, being honest and not overly protecting yourself, can help bring fear out in the open, making it easier to address. How does this relate to our fourth principle? Never act against your conscience. When we act against our true selves, we're avoiding our fears and internal conflicts, pretending everything is fine and becoming increasingly unnatural. If we face those fears, we're less likely to act against our conscience and more likely to tackle challenges head-on. When we're willing to admit our anxieties or mistakes, we move through life with greater ease. This is the essence of the fourth principle. Never act against your conscience. Don't act against yourself for small rewards. I remember trying to achieve an academic title by publishing papers I didn't believe in, thinking it would benefit me. Looking back, it felt like a waste. This principle centers on the importance of respecting human dignity. Human relationships aren't transactional. We're not tools for each other. When we treat others as mere means to an end, problems arise in our relationships, leading us to act against our conscience. Maintaining one's integrity and original intentions is the best way to avoid the traps of bureaucracy and rigid thinking. For example, if you became a teacher to inspire and educate students, but now only seek titles and promotions, you're straying from your purpose. True purpose comes from wanting to teach, to mentor, to contribute knowledge, not from chasing achievements to fit some external criteria. People are ends in themselves, not tools for personal ambition. The fifth principle is, view yourself from a distance. We discussed this psychological method in the happiness trap, where it's called detachment. By creating distance from our lives with humor, we aren't denying our pain, we're rising above it. Picture a scene from a concentration camp, where tension and fear of death were overwhelming. Frankl describes how prisoners would gather around a fire, telling jokes to lighten the moment. The humor often revolved around life after liberation or fantasies of food. One man joked about dreaming of being at a neighbor's dinner table after the camp. When served soup, he told the server, "Scoop from the bottom," an inside joke, since the camp soup was so sparse that everyone hoped for a morsel by scraping the pot. Even amidst suffering, they found reasons to laugh and poke fun at their situations. Plato once said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." This is closely tied to viewing oneself from a distance. Knowing you're engaged in a difficult fight helps you care for yourself, preventing the feeling of fighting alone. When you can view your life from afar with self-compassion, you can care for yourself more deeply, lifting your spirits and giving yourself the comfort and strength to keep going. There's an exercise called self-detachment technique. How does it work? One day, while Frankl was laboring in the concentration camp, his shoes tore. In the camp, this was nearly a death sentence. Worn-out shoes slowed you down, and slowing down meant risking being shot. His feet hurt terribly, his body was exhausted, there was no water, and he was working under a scorching sun. He thought, "Today is the day, I might not make it." But then, at that moment, he had a breakthrough with self-detachment. He imagined himself in the future, standing at an international psychology forum, well-dressed, giving a speech about this exact moment. He started viewing his pain and exhaustion as part of a story he would someday share, focusing on the details he'd later recount. This shift helped him endure one of his hardest days. While some people broke down over a broken shoelace, he turned his suffering into a source of strength, seeing it as material for his life story. Practicing self-detachment allows you to view yourself from a distance. Humor and self-deprecation are powerful tools, and openly admitting faults makes you more relatable. This ability to observe yourself with compassion lets you see your life more clearly and gives you direction. This is Principle 5. View yourself from a distance. Become a camera on the wall, watching your life with care and understanding, rather than getting lost in the moment. The sixth principle is change your focus. Take the example of a white-collar worker who, after losing his high-level job, found himself working as a caddy at a golf course. Imagine the mental shift, from playing golf to carrying clubs for others. But instead of dwelling on his change in fortune, he decided to find joy in caddying. Previously, he tipped others. Now he enjoyed receiving tips. He found satisfaction in understanding the players' perspectives, providing good service, and drawing happiness from their appreciation. Listening to successful people talk, he became an observer rather than a participant, gaining new insights and finding unexpected rewards. Here, a key principle is that every problem has at least 3 perspectives, often more. With flexible thinking, you can see any situation from multiple angles. When we're mentally rigid or stuck in thought prisons, we lose that flexibility. Keeping your mind adaptable and looking at conflict from different angles instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness opens new solutions. A classic example is in the Italian film Life is Beautiful, directed by Roberto Benigni. The father and son are sent to a concentration camp, and the father tells his son it's all a game, with a tank as the prize for winning. Watching the father endure abuse, the boy sees his dad as a high-level player. The film drew criticism from some, especially within the Jewish community, for using such a light-hearted approach. But many don't realize it was based on Benigni's father's true experience in a concentration camp. By reframing the experience as a game, he helped his son survive with hope and resilience. If one can shift perspective even in the face of such horrors, then there's no hardship that can't be reviewed with fresh eyes. So, learn to reframe challenges by changing your perspective. Here's an exercise called mental travel. Sitting in your room, close your eyes and imagine yourself skiing in Switzerland, Austria, or around the Alps. When you realize that your mental life can transcend your physical reality, you gain a new sense of freedom. Changing the focus of our lives helps us avoid getting trapped in our current struggles, constantly battling our pain. Remember, Every problem has at least three perspectives to consider. The last principle, dare to transcend yourself, invites us to go beyond our self-centered viewpoint. Why can our eyes see the world clearly? Because they can't see themselves. If the eye could see itself, it would mean there's an issue, a cataract, a disease. Our eyes see the world when they don't focus on themselves, and similarly, people who are too focused on themselves limit their view of life. When we step outside our narrow self-focus and start serving others, the world opens up. I read in a book recently that one of the greatest misconceptions is believing that selfishness leads to self-benefit. True self-interest is natural, but selfishness rarely leads to benefit. On the contrary, selfishness often brings more anxiety and difficulty. If everyone realized that selfishness doesn't bring gain, humanity's challenges would diminish. Few understand this yet, so books like these are essential, teaching us to transcend the self. Think beyond, considering your organization, industry, or even the planet. You'll find your attachment to immediate concerns lessens significantly. By transcending the self, you free yourself from the constant worries that arise from obsessing over your own body and needs. In the concentration camp, there was a guard whom Frankl and others initially despised, assuming he was just another cruel German soldier. After the camp, however, they discovered that this guard had secretly bought medicine with his own money to help them survive. Despite being a German officer, he had a deep kindness and wanted to save lives, though his duty required a different exterior. Frankl later reflected that we can't judge people solely by outward appearances, as they may differ greatly from our assumptions. Daniel Kahneman, author of Thinking Fast and Slow, chose psychology because of a powerful childhood experience. As a 13-year-old Jewish boy out past curfew, he feared for his life when approached by a German officer. Instead, the officer kindly asked where he lived, offered him chocolate, and showed him a photo of his own child, saying, "I have a son your age," before safely escorting him home. This complexity of human nature, even among enemies, taught Kahneman the importance of understanding others, leading him to psychology. If we embrace this complexity in others, we find forgiveness and transcend the self, discovering our connection to a greater meaning. These 7 principles offer insights on finding purpose, building upon man's search for meaning to help us navigate life's meaning maze. Worried that 7 principles are too many? The author distilled them into 3 core principles. OPA 1. Others. Build meaningful connections. See others as ends, not means. Every encounter can hold significance. 2. Purpose. Aim for a noble goal in your work, beyond just money or status. Elevate your purpose, and you'll raise your potential. 3. Attitude. Embrace life with a positive attitude. There's always a choice to approach life with positivity. The author uses a 4-quadrant model. The horizontal axis represents a spectrum from failure to success, while the vertical axis ranges from despair to meaning. This framework categorizes people into 4 types, with those who are both successful and purposeful being the ideal. But another valuable type is those who may not be outwardly successful yet find meaning in life. This direction is worth pursuing. While we may not become wealthy overnight, a shift in mindset and a connection to meaning can transform us into people of purpose and value almost instantly. In the lower quadrant, you'll find people whose lives and work are both failing and filled with despair, devoid of any meaning. We call this the dead fish quadrant, inspired by Stephen Chow's famous line, "If a person lives without dreams, what's the difference between them and a salted fish?" Many talk about the salted fish flipping over, and I hope everyone can rise out of this quadrant where there's no meaning, no purpose, and life feels empty. Then there's another quadrant for those who are successful but lack meaning and feel empty. I think we've all seen people like this. Let's call it the wealthy but empty quadrant. They have money but little else, spending their days on gambling, idle activities, and empty pursuits, yet feeling spiritually hollow and in pain. By examining these four quadrants, it becomes clear that the dividing line between joy and dissatisfaction isn't success or failure, but rather this vertical axis, finding purpose in life. Finding meaning is key. To find it, we can use OPA, building meaningful connections with others, seeking a higher purpose in work, and embracing life with a positive attitude. The last two chapters of the book introduce OPA in the workplace. Studies show only about 30% of people are truly engaged at work, maybe even less. Most people feel disengaged, seeing their jobs as a necessary burden to earn a living. But if we can help that remaining 70% to build meaningful relationships at work, rather than viewing others as mere tools, and if we can instill a sense of higher purpose, we can make a massive difference, improving lives globally. Then there's OPA in society. Society bombards us with negative news, stress, and overwhelming issues. Can we form meaningful connections within our communities? Can we find a higher goal in our roles in society and contribute to the greater good? The staff at Fandang Book Club find great joy in their work because they see the changes these books inspire in society. We've witnessed people's lives shift because one book created a ripple effect, leading them toward a more meaningful existence. This kind of joy doesn't come from bonuses, but from a deep sense of purpose. If we can spread love in society, we'll experience the echo effect. In a valley, if you shout something harsh, you'll hear the echo of that harshness. But if you call out with love, the echo returns with love. This echo effect in society is powerful. So by applying OPA in our communities, we can contribute to a better society, which in turn improves our own lives. Frankl left a rich legacy. There's a movie about his life, a museum dedicated to him in Vienna, and many books on logotherapy. Stephen Covey, who was greatly influenced by Frankl, wrote the foreword for Prisoners of Our Thoughts, and even though Covey has passed, his impact remains. In this book, Covey says, "To learn without doing is not to learn. To know without doing is not to know. The things we learn must be put into practice. Only through action do we truly find meaning and happiness." So, in today's discussion, I invite each of you to consider this. If you were to write an autobiography, what would the title be? Take your time with this. It's a valuable exercise in connecting with your personal sense of meaning. Thank you all, and see you in our next book.